Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Clark Smith, who's the president of Golden Years Financial, and we'll be talking about retirement lifestyle. Clark, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Mike. Happy to be here.
You know, it's interesting. We talked about in a previous conversation about, the concept of striving and building and growing and accumulating funds for retirement. Now we want to talk about, okay, now that we've checked the box off and accumulated the right amount and had that plan in place, what's that retirement lifestyle look like? We want to make sure that we're, beginning with the end in mind. So, what, from your experience when you're working with your clients, what keeps people from enjoying retirement as much as they actually could?
Mike, one thing that we strive for here at Golden Years Financial is to make everyone's retirement as golden as possible, to make the golden years truly golden. And people generally envision retirement as a time of joy, a time of exploration. And then a lot of times people find themselves really being held back from enjoying that chapter. One of the biggest barriers is financial insecurity. When the paycheck ceases, the anxiety of maintaining a stable income can really overshadow the excitement of the newfound freedom that's available. Financial plans
100%.
Yeah, many financial plans are designed to provide a consistent income stream, and often it's indexed with inflation. But what a lot of people really fail to take into account is the reality of their spending patterns in retirement. Those spending patterns in retirement are typically not linear. Most retirees spend more in the early years. They're out there pursuing passions, doing things they want to do. They've always said, one day we're going to. And when we first retire is typically a time period our bodies are young enough and healthy enough to get out and do those things. I was dealing with a couple, I think it was last summer, and they always had a dream of going to Africa on a photography safari, but they didn't think they could afford to. So I just built into their budget that they were going to take an African photography safari first year. And I built numerous trips in the first 10 years of retirement for them. And then we built it, their spending would go down for some time period, because while we often spend a lot more in those first years of retirement, we do have a decline in expenses during the middle years, but toward the end, costs often rise primarily due to healthcare needs. And good planning, in my opinion, recognizes the ebb and flow of ensuring that resources are allocated to match those changing demands, because that's what allows people to retire and focus on living fully without having financial worry.
It kind of makes me think of, in a sense, you act like a life coach of sorts, to sit down with someone and say, tell me what retirement looks like to you and how much travel. Oh, you like photography. Oh, you like African safaris. And the next person might say, my dream is to whatever. So once you paint that picture and articulate what retirement looks like, then let's figure out where you're at now and what it's going to take to get you there, and making, plans for some of the changes that could come in between. I think that's a super a great approach that you're describing.
Well, thank you. And it's often a little more complex than that, because when we retire, we typically have a loss of a daily structure. We've got a professional identity. And in my experience, men are more apt to identify who they are by what they do professionally. And so that loss of professional identity and loss of daily structure can very much leave people kind of feeling adrift. And they've got lifestyle changes. They've got Just this transition from a bustling work environment, which is very much welcomed in the very beginning. But having that transition from a bustling work environment to quieter days can certainly lead to feelings of isolation. And our emotions play a crucial role because we've got the joy of this newfound freedom, but it can quickly be overshadowed by fear and uncertainty. And having a well-rounded retirement plan addresses these emotional and financial challenges at the same time. It typically offers safeguards like perhaps strong social connections, community involvement. It really enables retirees to embrace their golden years with confidence and fulfillment.
You bring up a great point there, and we could probably spend about 4 hours on that one concept, which is, hey, you spent decades of your life doing X, whatever you did, and you felt that purpose. I got up and I did this for work, and I don't care whether you were working on the line at Ford and helping to make cars. That was a purpose. But then when you retire, you're getting up and doing something totally different, and your goals change, your schedule changes. And I know that there's some research out there that says when that happens, there's a chance that you can feel like, okay, well, I don't matter, or, that whole emotional side of things, which can lead to a reduced lifespan. But talk a little bit about that approach, how you help your clients plan for that so that they're living their life to the fullest during retirement.
Well, Mike, a lot of things that lose power when they're brought into the light.
Yeah.
And if people understand ahead of time that they're going to have these profound lifestyle changes, that they're going to go from a loss of structured days and perhaps the need to redefine identity. If they understand ahead of time that daily routines might need to be reinvented, there may be some relationships that require nurturing or even renegotiating. They've got the time to do it, and that's the perfect time to do it. And when they understand ahead of time that, these daily routines are going to need to be reinvented, they can put time and energy into how am I going to reinvent these daily routines. A lot of times new hobbies are picked up. A lot of times old hobbies are picked up again. And often those skills become even sharper than they were before. We've got time to do all those things that we said one day I'm going to. And there's something else that kicks in that I don't hear many people talk about. I mentioned it on the last podcast, and that's the fact that our bodies are young enough and healthy enough to do those things.
Yeah.
I remember a couple of years ago, I had a client, and he had the ability to work from anywhere in the world. I don't remember if this was before or after COVID, but he had the ability to work from anywhere in the world. And he was 67, so he was eligible to take his Social Security at that point. But he wanted to wait until he was 70 to take it because he would get more money. Well, it turns out his wife really wanted him to take Social Security right then because she wanted them to go spend a month on the Amalfi Coast and use his Social Security to fund it. So I did the math for him. And if he had taken Social Security at 67, this couple was going to bring in $108,000 by the time he reached age 70.
Wow.
And I don't remember exactly how much more money he would gotten every month at age 70. But the question becomes, let's say, for instance, it's $900. I don't remember the exact dollar amount. The numbers I'm going to speak about are wrong. Let's say it's $900 a month. How many months does it take bringing in an extra $900 to make up not bringing in the $108,000?
Yeah.
When they started thinking about it like that, and I think in his case, his break-even point was going to be age 80. It may have been age 82. I don't remember. But when they started thinking about it like that, they're like, we may not be healthy enough to go spend a month on the Amalfi Coast when we're in our mid 70s.
Mhm.
And so I just asked the question, well, there's $108,000 sitting here. If you take Social Security now, if you delay it, let's say you break even at age 80, at what point in your life are you going to enjoy that money more? And they came to the realization that they would enjoy that money more by taking it right then. And they got to have a month on the Amalfi Coast because of it.
Wow. And if you were to hit rewind before you had that, conversation with them and asked the question right off the bat, it might have been answered differently, but you framed it up in a way that really served them well to meet their needs, not any need you had. It didn't matter to you, but I just loved that. And they're like, now that you mention it, it sure would be nice if, and then there became a clear path forward.
Mike, when we're at the end of life, for instance, and we're laying there, relying on our deathbed, typically having that extra $100,000 is not what people are grateful for. What they're grateful for is the things they did and the memories that they were able to create for the people that are still going to be left on planet Earth. And in my experience, people's biggest regrets are things they did not do.
Yes. That aligns up with kind of like a personal development mantra that a lot of people have heard of, where it's like, we are more motivated by the fear of loss than the prospect of gain. So at what you just said there at the end of life, we missed out on X or Y or Z, not, I wish I had an extra buck or two in the bank. So it's all about those opportunities that you lost out on. So what can we do about that today? Not spend every dime you have, but maybe sanely and safely maximize those moments. I think that's a spectacular observation.
Well, and I think we talked about this on the last podcast as well. I'm not positive, but when there's the realization that we've got the ability, both financially and health-wise, to go and do these things now, and there will come a time in which we don't have the ability, health-wise or physically, to do the things that we want to do, then oftentimes a plan can be a little bit front-loaded in the end with fund money, with the understanding that, in 10 years, for instance, spending may need to come down, and then have the ability to ramp back up at the end with healthcare. But you mentioned the fear of loss, and people are afraid more of loss than they get more. There's more sadness associated with loss than there is happiness associated with gain.
Yeah.
But one thing people don't think about until it's towards the end, that loss is not just financial. Loss is lifestyle as well. What did I not do that we always said we were going to? And I don't know how many widows I've dealt with who have said, John and I always planned to fill in the blank from there. And then he passed away. And so I'm having to do these things with a group of ladies because he never got to.
It's like you hear people like, oh, hey, it's been so long since we've seen each other. We ought to catch up and grab a coffee. Yeah, we should. Have a nice day. Well, in reality, when that conversation comes up, it should be like, oh, yeah, it has been a while. What are you doing next Thursday? And to your example there, it's like, you know what, John and I really, when we sit down every year and we make some plans, boy, it sure would be nice if we could take this trip or that trip, put it on the books. Because it's like the old saying, knowledge is power. Just having knowledge is not the power. It's implementing that knowledge that's the true power. Well, having some wonderful plan, for this trip or that fun thing to do, that's fine and all, but put a plan into place to start making strides toward that. Now, that doesn't mean blow all of your money and do all these fun things and now you don't have money for retirement. But if you have a balanced plan, take some action, because that's a safeguard that can be put into place with those lifestyle changes that can and will happen. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if you're going to, be physically able to go do that hike that you wanted to do for Machu Picchu or whatever the case is. So, take action. I think that's, it's kind of like, it reminds me of that old movie from the 90s, Dead Poets Society, Carpe Diem, seize the day.
Absolutely. Retirement is often a time of emotional growth,
Mm-hmm.
but that emotional growth requires courage, and it also requires reflection, and it requires having a good plan that includes financial, emotional, and social aspects that can act as safeguards and turn pitfalls into stepping stones.
Yeah.
When you build a strong support network and maintain open communication with the people that you love, that can provide the security and encouragement that's needed to thrive. And when income safeguards are in place, and this is something that's often overlooked, it should not be overlooked, but income safeguards and guardrails can let us know when we can and even when we should spend more, as well as letting us know when we should perhaps cut back on spending a little bit. Times of excessive stock market returns allow this freedom, and income guardrails, when they're in place properly, for instance, I'll give you an example. Let's say that you and your wife need, I don't know, $8,000 a month to live and have fun, enjoy things. And times have been good for a few years, and you're spending 8,000, but there are other things that you want to do. I've said, well, I've got these guardrails in place in your plan, and these guardrails say that right now you could easily increase your spending to $10,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
But if your account value falls to this level, maybe you need to bring it back down to 8,200.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost never see anybody come in and show me what they're doing and have guardrails in place. And income guardrails can be so important for allowing us to enjoy life the way we really want to, and more importantly, the way we could enjoy life.
And it makes me think of this, Clark. Some of the things that could crop up that would make you have a guardrail in place, whatever that might be, long-term care, health needs, whatever the case is. If you have those safeguards and guardrails in place and did not need them, you still have peace of mind. But if you ignored those things and didn't put the safeguards and guardrails in place, and all of a sudden you needed extra money for whatever those things are, and you didn't have it, what an anxiety-laden feeling that is. So I would much rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Absolutely. And the way I think of guardrails are kind of like the rails that are in place when you're going over a bridge. We've got them on both sides, and there are a lot of times that people that don't have this in place might want to spend extra money and don't know that, hey, it's okay, because nobody told them ahead of time. I'm putting an upper guardrail in place as well that says if your account value gets to here, it's okay to spend this. It's okay for your spending to go up to this level. But if account value gets down to here, your spending needs to come down with it. And, it's important to put those in place so that if the account value does get down to that and they do need to cut spending, that they're cutting it to a level that was acceptable to begin with. This is all part of the mantra of you are likely to be able to enjoy a better retirement than you realize. And a good plan points this out to people.
Well, Clark, if someone is interested in having that good plan and having those guardrails and safeguards in place, what's the best way that they can reach out and connect with you?
GoldenYearsRIA.com.
Perfect. Well, I will make sure we have that in the show notes and they can learn more about how you're serving your clients with this clarity. And I think that is just spectacular. And thank you so much for coming back on today. It was a real pleasure chatting with you.
Mike, as always, I enjoyed it. Good to talk with you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.